Hi folks, how are you doing? Once again we had a very interesting round at the Petrosian Memorial in Moscow. We had long and hard-fought games like the one between Aronian and Liren, which lasted for about 6 hours or even more. A very unbalanced battle between former World Championship contenders Kramnik and Leko, but the game I'm going to show you here, I think it's the most entertaining of this round. We had a decisive result between the two Alexanders here. Grischuk with white pieces, the leader of the tournament, Morozevich with black. It was fairly entertaining and instructive game, I think. 1d4. It's still difficult to me to get accustomed to be seeing Grischuk playing anything else than 1e4, but he's getting very, or perhaps he was very polyvalent and very flexible player in order of openings, like imitating what Carlsen started doing, and people like Karyakin and Karwan and others are trying to incorporate d4, c4, traditionally 1e4 players. So he's doing so far very well with the English, the Queen's Gambit, etc. Today he had the white side of the Slav defense against Morozevich. Knight f3, knight f6 were played. And after knight c3 we have a6, the Chevanenko a6 Slav with complex positional ideas, lots of really difficult to understand positions there, with blockading, with pawn tension in the center, etc. Well, white has a number of options here, and Grischuk chose to play queen to c2. Interesting. What was his idea if black was to take on c4, if he was going to go for the brave and real gambit with e4, having a strong pawn center but giving up c4 as b5 is going to be played, or he was planning to play a4 here, aiming to recapture c4 someday, preventing b5. You already know all this, but instead a different move was played by Morozevich, g6. A little bit strange, you may argue. This is creating a mixture of the Slav and between the Slav and the Grunfeld defense. And white takes here what is given to him. e4 in one move is possible, so why not try to get all the space in the center? f6 e4 was played. D takes, knight takes, bishop g7, and here bishop e2. Okay, Grischuk could have tried to take on f6, where clearly I think it's better to take with the pawn, where black can easily castle, play knight d7, develop the bishop, play f5, control e4, etc., having a sound position, I think. Meanwhile, taking with the bishop after bishop h6, black is not castling short anymore, and after castle long, black king in the center could suffer a little bit. This could be a little bit dangerous and sharp, but okay, this didn't happen. Bishop e2, just improving, developing the piece. Both players castled here, and here bishop f5 was played right away by Morozevich. There was this interesting line, another possibility of taking on the knight on e4 first. This was even suggested by Grischuk as a possibility during the press conference, later in the press conference. And now bishop f5, queen h4 for instance, and something like e5, with an interesting possibilities here of exchanging queens or not, tension in the center going on. It's interesting, another position which was possible here, but Morozevich plays bishop f5 right away. Now knight takes on f6 with check, bishop takes, and the queen must leave c2, and she goes to b3, attacking b7, queen c7, h3 was played. Here we reach a kind of a critical moment in the game. Morozevich plays c5, which is a committal move, allowing of course d5, with lots of space in the center. Well, this is giving wings to the bishop on f6. Of course, this dark square diagonal is very nice for this bishop, but it has its cons as well, because white is going to have more space here. and in general is going to have better harmony and coordination. A5, certainly there is a plan for black. He wants to play, or the main plan would be to play rook a6, rook b6, and putting lots of pressure on b2 together with this bishop on f6, as I said a second ago. So well, Grischuk decided not to take too much care about that pawn, rather sacrifice it, and instead activate his pieces and look for serious counterplay, serious compensation for the sacrificed pawn, which seems it's gonna be a good idea. Bishop h6 was played first, rook e8, and now g4. Why not? He can afford himself to take space there on the king side. The bishop must go back, and Morozevich chose to put it on c8, not on d7, not to block the good square of the knight. Also knight a6, although could be played later, knight a6 before, but that's not Morozevich's plan, so he goes to c8 to have d7 available for his knight. Rook a d1, knight goes to d7 now, and rook f e1, and finally we see Morozevich completing the plan he had, rook a6 to go to b6 and win the b2 pawn. Bishop f1 was played. This is well, a piece relocation, a piece recycling. Once again, I keep saying this almost in any video I make. This is very good thing to learn from these GM games, how they keep improving their pieces, keep relocating them to more active places. Now the bishop wants to go to g2, to the great diagonal. Rook b6 and queen e3, and bishop took there on b2, so we have this slightly unbalanced position. Black won a pawn, but I think the compensation is clear. White has first of all a couple of good pair of pawns here on the center, cramping a little bit, taking space. He also has good pieces. There are a couple of rooks on the central fires. The knight is good, the queen is well placed, and there is this bishop, for instance, making this king's life not that easy. I mean, this is part of the compensation of white. Black king isn't that well placed, isn't that secure, but something that probably is more important here, the other representation of the monarchy here, the queen isn't very safe either. The queen, as we're gonna see right now, you can see here, lacks space, lacks squares to go to, and this is going to be a source for counterplay, source for initiative for Grischuk here, very important. Bishop f4 was played. Well, only one place the queen can go to, d8. Now after knight g5, the knight on itself on g5 is quite active, has some active possibilities, some possibilities there of sacrificing or something, but the real deal for black here is that white's plan is simply to go queen g3. Of course, if white was to move 3 times in a row, go to queen g3 and play bishop c7, supporting this bishop to go to c7, just catching this poor little black queen. So this is probably the main source of compensation for Grischuk here, and certainly there is clear compensation here. White is much more active, and black is not getting harmony or coordination in his pieces. Morozevich took a pawn, but he would rather give it back to well, improve his pieces, to have more space and harmony in his pieces. Bishop d4, okay, bishop goes back, attacking the queen with at least having a good piece, but simply queen to g3. Okay, it was tempting to try to make work the rook sacrifice here, the exchange sacrifice, c takes, queen takes, but the position is unclear, I think. Not that sure how white is going to prove his compensation here. Well, there is bishop pair, there is black, there is total absence of coordination for black, more space for white, but unclear position, not that easy. It was much simpler to play just queen g3, keeping trying to accomplish the plan. Bishop c7, catching the queen would be game over, of course. So Morozevich is forced to make this ugly move, e5. After the capture en passant on e6, we have a structural change which doesn't favor black too much. There is this isolated weak pawn on e6, which by the way has left some squares weak here around king. There are some open lines. Black still lacks harmony, good piece collocation. At least the queen has more space here to breathe. It's not going to be catched now, but certainly apart from this good bishop on d4, black is really lacking good strong pieces. Bishop g2, just completing piece relocation. By the way, both players were already with some serious time trouble here, and we're only at move 24. And e5 was played here, trying to solidify, but certainly there were some crazy possibilities here. Here we are at the moment where both players had less than 5-10 minutes on the clock to make like 15-16 moves, and certainly white would love to have 3 hours here to calculate all the crazy possibilities we had here. Finally, Grischuk made a practical and pragmatic decision to just retreat the bishop, threaten a5 with a skewer there, which is not a bad move. But it was much more complicated, but objectively speaking much better to try another things, like the main of them was to try a bishop d5 check first. Seems very natural. King goes to g7, and now we had this queen h4 little move, going for the killer on the king side, trying to checkmate black. And here knight f8 was a move, and here we had Grischuk had rather rook takes d4, a very strong move. Well, first of all, let me show you a funny line which was leading probably nowhere, but it was interesting. This queen sacrifice on h6, queen h6 check. The king has to take. Now we have knight f7 discovered and double check with the knight and the bishop. So the king goes back, and there is this interesting repetition of moves. There is this check, and well, repeating moves, this would be draw. But black could also go for king g8, and although knight taking the queen on d8 is discovered check with the bishop, white has just given up too much pieces, and playing knight e6 black is even slightly better, it seems, although the position remains unclear. This was certainly too much to evaluate correctly with a couple of minutes. Of course, Grischuk showed in the press conference he had seen this repetition and all this stuff with queen h6 check, but what he really missed here was not queen h6 check, but rook takes d4. There this was absolutely a killer move, it seems. And the best black had here was to take with the e pawn. Well, maybe with the c pawn was I didn't check it out. It should be good for white as well. But taking with the e pawn, well, the point was that after rook exchange, the strong and strange move, but well, making lots of sense while you have it on the board, was to play knight f3. These backward moves are very difficult to see. The knight is guarding e1, very important. No counter attacks here, or no more checks. He's supporting, for instance, a bishop e5 check. Queen h6 check is in the air, so this is totally crushing position for white. Black can already resign without any problem. So this is the move that Grischuk himself recognized. He hadn't seen, he missed this move. Well, he said it was a pity he couldn't switch on the computer to see this move. Of course, it was a pity. But instead, well, he played bishop d2, which is not bad either. Keeps attention, keeps some advantage. And certainly Morozevich had bigger time trouble than he had, so it was a practical decision to play bishop d2. Now rook f6 was played. Knight to f3, another practical decision. White has two plans. First, he could try, not in this exact position, but bishop g5 could be sometimes an idea, not exactly here, because rook takes f3, removing the defender of the bishop, then queen would take, some tactical sequence there. But white is also threatening to take the strongest piece probably of black, this strong bishop on d4. So he says, well, I will replace your strong bishop with my average knight, and I will have the bishop pair in the much better position. Knight b6 was played here by Morozevich. Not very fortunate move, but the position was already very hard, and the clock was ticking there. So here Grischuk thought for a while and went for the final blow. He first takes the bishop on d4, pawn takes, and delivers with bishop g5, the fork, the skewer, winning the exchange, at least the exchange there. Also bishop takes a5 was another possibility, but of course, well, why not bishop g5? Rook went to f8, taking here right away on f6 is a possibility, but Grischuk plays queen e5. He knows he can afford, he would love to exchange pieces here, as he has the material advantage and he's winning any endgame here. Any simplification is favoring white. Knight went back to d7, and now bishop takes f6, threatening black's queen as well. Queens were exchanged on f6, and this is absolutely over. White is up the exchange, and he has much better position. He's winning a pawn, for instance, here with rook b1. b7 is not defendable. Well, you may wonder why not rook f7. This is why. This was in fact played in the game. Morozievich played rook f7, and the point is that white plays g5, threatening the knight and removing the only defender of the interesting and dangerous d5 square. The knight had to depart, knight d7, and first a check on e8, even if the rook goes there. Bishop d5 check, king to h8, and after this beautiful and elegant smart move, rook b e1, it was all she wrote. Morozevich has nothing to do here. He's absolutely crushed, so resigned the game, giving Grischuk an astonishing 3 out of 3 to begin this Petrosian Memorial. Let's see what happens here very briefly, although it's not that difficult. If rook takes, well, rook check, this is leading to checkmate after the knight goes there. This is rook g8 checkmate. The pawn is helping white a little, and if not anything else like h5, well, rook would be exchanged here, and rook e8 winning a piece and the house, forcing the resignation, of course. So there it goes. An amazing performance so far in this Tashir tournament in Moscow for Alexander Grischuk, entering the 2080-100 select club and playing so far an excellent chess. Thanks for watching.